right. On today's podcast, I'm very excited to introduce someone who's been a mentor and someone who I've been following his career for many years, since 2015. Happens to be, I would consider part of the family, friends of my cousin, brother of my cousin's best friend from childhood, Ryan Harwood. Ryan, I would love if you can just introduce yourself, tell us where you're from, college, education, and then currently what you're up to.
My name is Ryan Harwood. I grew up in Hewlett in Long Island, Five Towns boy. I went to school in Philadelphia at University of Pennsylvania. And I'm currently the CEO of Gallery Media Group. I founded a company called PureWow in the women's lifestyle digital media space 10 years ago, which was acquired by Gary Vaynerchuk, which is when we formed Gallery Media Group to be a parent company of a bunch of publishing and media assets that we are launching over the past 4 years and continuing to do.
Awesome. And, I kind of want to touch on your career because I think it's one that a lot of people can learn from. And I think a lot of people are trying to actually mimic it today, where, you were in investment banking and then from there decided to create this, company called PureWow, and then obviously got acquired by Gary, as you mentioned. Can you kind of walk us through the process of, and just like the journey of, what you were doing when you were in investment banking? When was that aha moment of like, shit, I can't do this anymore. I need to do something else. And then when you did start PureWow, what were some obstacles and challenges that you had to overcome over the years? And then, how did you overcome them?
Sure. So I played tennis in college, and then out of college, I decided to do a short stint of low-level professional tournaments. I wasn't ready to hang the rackets up, which meant I was off cycle for the recruiting of jobs because I stopped playing middle of the year. And then I really just needed to process of elimination. I needed to take a job, see if I liked that industry or not, and get going. Because I was off the analyst program, so to say.
Right.
So I joined a small investment bank at the time in Manhattan. Finance was kind of like, I went to Wharton undergrad, so I was a little bit brainwashed that finance was the only job that you could possibly do, which was obviously not the case. But so I went into a small investment bank, got a great experience, and then an opportunity at Goldman Sachs came knocking, and I took that. And I was there for about 5-6 years. And I really liked it. I like finance. I like numbers. I like business. But ultimately, there were a couple things that made me decide I really needed to leave the industry. One was I started to realize I was more of a creative, actually. And as much as I always fancied myself a businessman first, and math was my best subject, all that stuff. My passion was more on creative. I was the type of kid that when I was 20, my 20s with my friends, I was the one that was creating videos after our trips and creating albums and curating our mixes on music. That was what drove my fire, actually. I was more of a creative. So I needed to find something where I could flex business and creative, I realized. And then number two was when I projected forward. I was probably 27 at the time when I was when I'm 45 years old and I have a family and kids, etc., am I going to be really happy going to work every day in this industry? And I was pretty definitively able to say, I don't think so. So that was the impetus for me starting to look at other industries. And the way PureWow came about was through those conversations, I kept gravitating back towards media, technology, media. And essentially, at first, I wanted to do...
Sorry, Ryan, what year was this? Just so we can think back on timeline and where we were.
2009 is when I was thinking about all this.
So social media was really just coming out, picking up.
Yeah. Facebook was just getting going. Instagram wasn't a thing yet, etc. So 2010 is when I officially left and launched PureWow. It was March 1st, 2010 was my first official day where I was an employee of PureWow. And yeah, the reason I went that route with PureWow was half research, half just needing to do something. Again, I'm a big fan of like, yes, being thoughtful, but also not over analyzing and overthinking. And you need to just do something in order to see if it's the right thing ultimately, or the right move. So the research that I did was essentially, this was where the white space was, I felt, in the digital market. It was 30 plus women, call it, 25 to 49. It felt like that age range, young moms, etc. Really the only thing for them on the internet was calling them moms. It was stodgy. It was not really modern. And it was either you were kind of like young, super trendy and young, or you were a mom. And it was like
no in between.
Yeah. And that just didn't make sense to me. This was all digital, right? The magazines didn't always approach it like this, but this was digital. And that was a main driving force behind why I went with that demographic and why I created PureWow. But ultimately, I also knew that, like, and I know you're a basketball fan, how in the finals, a lot of the teams always have to have the irrational 3-point guy, right? Whether it's J.R. Smith or whoever it is, someone needs to chuck up a three.
Someone who has no brain, like, doesn't think about anything. All he does is shoot.
And you just need someone that has the balls to do that in a situation they have no business doing that.
Yeah.
And I equated a little bit to that. You need a little bit of that in you when you're making that jump, because otherwise you're not like, what permission did I have to start a women's lifestyle media company coming out of Goldman Sachs as a young male? I had zero permission, but some of that irrational thinking to just go, do, try, see is what came into play there.
I'm laughing because my mom would always tell me as a kid I had brass balls, like just growing up. And that definitely plays a role into stepping up and doing something where you're just in an uncomfortable situation where you don't know what you're about to get into. Where you're like, all right, head first, let's figure this out. And, as you know, I'm sure it gets lonely, and having those times, dark times where things aren't working out and pushing through, but understanding that you're building. And I think that obviously comes from support system and just perception. That's something I've been working on myself, just like mental health and perception of, you're doing well, but it takes years to build this thing. It doesn't just happen overnight.
Absolutely. It takes.
But I want to actually, because PureWow, my wife has been in the publishing industry for the last 8 years. She started at Condé, worked her way up there, now is at Hearst Media. So I'm very, I understand that industry very well. And back then, I want to just ask, the Teen Vogues of the world, the Glamours of the world, did you see them as your competition, or did you see the younger companies? I don't even know if Girl Boss and those type of businesses were open at that time, but who was kind of like your direct competition, or were you really just like first to market?
It's a good question. We definitely weren't first to market. Women's lifestyle media was always a crowded space.
Right.
I felt I had a vision to execute on it in a different way. And I believed in myself to outwork the competition and just go head first in terms of executing in a better way. So yeah, they were all competitors, honestly. Like, anyone that went after advertising dollars was a competitor, because they were taking airtime away from you to talk about what you wanted to talk about. And they were taking a piece of the pie away from you. So the ones you specifically mentioned were a lot younger demographic, so not a direct competitor, but right. For sure, like, anyone that was going after ad dollars was a competitor. Anyone from Facebook to Vogue to, Viacom, anyone.
Yeah, and it's so interesting because for me, right, I came on the paid media side of the business. That's where I came up. And I would always tell people, growing up, my first thing is like your core target market you want are college kids, because when you're in high school, you're in middle school, you always want to be in college. And then when you're out of college and you're an adult, you always want to go back to college. But the other market, which in my opinion has the most buying power on the internet, is the exact demographic that you're speaking about. The 30 to like 45-year-old women are the ones that are always spending money on beauty, fashion, and they're using their actual dollars on these social platforms. And, that's how these platforms are able to evolve. That's how why brands are spending more money and advertising dollars on these platforms, is because they're actually seeing conversions happen. So it's very interesting because PureWow and the market you were going after at that time ended up just being the market that all brands wanted to really hit, especially in the female market. Of course, L'Occitane, which is where we actually met. When you came in and, we did a pitch for the L'Occitane business. For me, jock, grew up on sports, really always thought I would be involved in sports, and I continue to trend that way. But that learning experience and being in the beauty space was very eye-opening to me, and seeing how much power, how much money was involved in these industries. And then obviously when you get married, you learn a lot more as soon as your wife's like, hey, I like this serum. And it's like $300 for this little guy. And I'm like, okay, yeah, maybe next time. And you learn a little bit more about the industry as you start seeing pricing and different products. And I'm interested in honestly seeing if there, and I know it's growing a little bit, but the male side of the business, females have always kind of conquered the beauty space, seeing males and seeing what they're going to do with new products. I'm in conversations with a couple of those companies too right now, and seeing how that evolves will be interesting because, it's not necessarily manly to wear face cream every night before you go to bed, but at the same time, it helps your skin. And this is something that, I know just knowing you having conversations is an important part of your life, but I always talk about the foundational setting. For me, my grandfather, who I named my company after, my dad who passed, my mom, my whole family really is my support system. Mary, as you know, she's like my big sister, and Mark, her husband, is like my big brother. These are the people I lean on, right? When I'm in tough times, or I just need to get out of this mindset of like the stress and dark moments in business. I lean on my family to one, when I get too high, they bring me back down, but when I get too low, they'll bring me back to life. And I wanted to ask, who are those people in your life that have helped you in those dark times, in those dark moments? And then second part of that question is, what are those core philosophies? What are those core values that they instilled in you as a kid that have helped you over the years through business, and then just where you are today with your own family?
Yeah. So I'll start with mom, right?
Uh-huh.
Mom is the backbone of my self-esteem and the backbone of my confidence and how I try to treat every human being in this world. She always instilled for me at a very, very young age that kindness is king. Treat others as you want to be treated. I was the guy in middle school, elementary school, high school that if I saw somebody getting picked on, that was like the only thing that got me really mad.
Yeah.
And I would step up. It was one of those things that my mom just instilled for me in my DNA at a young age that you be nice to everyone, no matter what. Karma's a real thing, but more importantly, no one deserves to not be treated well. And I've used that as my North Star since I'm a tiny, tiny kid. My dad, on the other hand, was the one that instilled kind of the tough love, work ethic, win at all costs type mentality in a very, very professional, nice way.
Right, but, in a loving way.
He pushed me. When it came to tennis, when it came to, it never was good enough. And everybody reacts differently to that. I think what my father realized was that I reacted well to that.
Yeah.
I actually like people to be hard on me. I like when people tell me I'm not good enough. I like that. It drives
the challenge. Yeah.
And my dad knew how to press that button on me. Off the court, my dad was incredibly supportive in terms of advice and guidance on real life problems. So he wasn't like that off the sports and school. With grades and sports, he was very tough love. Nothing's ever good enough. On everything else, he was incredibly overly supportive and loving and adored me, and I was his best friend, and etc. So my mom and dad were the foundation of everything, no doubt about it. I'm the luckiest person in the world for the way they supported me and treated me. Honestly, I truly believe that. It
sounds like a real true Jewish relationship, right? And a real true Jewish upbringing. I couldn't agree more. I mean, that was the same for me, not to cut you off, but it's just funny hearing that, the kindness piece, and then you can't teach love, and seeing that instilled in your house. Going to UPenn, I'm sure you saw people who, endless funds, a lot of money, even growing up in Long Island, you see people with a lot of money, but then you realize, why are they so insecure? Why aren't they happy? And like, what are they striving for? Why is it the drugs or the materialistic things? Why isn't it just like the goal of building a family and building a career and, you know, trying to be a winner in that sense? You know, I think perception and just, you know, for you, and at least for me, I feel the same way. It's like it just gave you a clear vision of what you were looking for in life.
Yeah,
I think is important.
100%. And I was lucky. I had I had an older sister who, you know, Mary's best friend growing up, Kelly, and she was like a second mother to me. And it's, you know, having her and her friends and my mom's best friends and their daughters like allowed me to understand how to communicate and work with women, which was a benefit and a real skill in my opinion. So that was, and obviously that was, they were maternal and loving in a way that built self-esteem and confidence. So I owe a lot to my older sister for always being super supportive. And then I think, you know, my best friend since day one, I was very fortunate. I have a best friend named David Rodolitz since birth. I was literally placed in his crib when I was born, and having a foundation of a best friend that you've known since you're literally born is a very powerful feeling, to know that, you know, he's basically like blood. He's basically brother. He's honestly the person I'd go to first when something went wrong. Like, while my mom and dad obviously were the foundation of who I am, like David was the one I went to. Like, if I lost a tennis match I wasn't supposed to and I was crushed, or if you know, something happened with a girl or whatever it was, like he was the one that I would go to first, because I just wholeheartedly trusted him. He was the kindest, most generous soul. And I think those, you know, those four people were obviously the foundation of, I think, of who I am today, and that I continue to rely on in the craziest way.
That's awesome, man. And I think it's a key point what you mentioned is the communication with women, right? Having that strong mother. For me, I was raised by a single mother when my dad passed at 12. You know, being able to communicate with them, seeing their values and how they approach the world. I think it's given me somewhat of a leg up in the sense of like, you know, competition, and being able to communicate with them in a more natural way. And I think some people struggle with that. And, you know, to your point of having an older sister, I'm sure that was extremely beneficial. Obviously, at times it's like, get away from me, you're babying me, and probably still have that today. But still, at the end of the day, it all comes from love. And it's really just to see you be as happy as you can be. And then the next topic I just wanted to chat about, and, you know, I'm sure there are many people, but please just give me like your key ones, is mentors and role models in your life, right? Where you didn't get to where you are today by yourself. And I think that's super important. Not, you know, obviously you got there through your hard work, but I feel the same way. It always takes an army. It takes people around you, a close-knit circle. And especially mentors who are willing to help guide you, who have been there before, take the time out of their day, which you've done for me, as we mentioned, you know, before this call. You know, who are those people in your life that were those mentors and role models, and are you still close with them today?
Yeah, it's funny. I never thought of them as mentors or role models. For me, it was more about, I had a knack since a young age of surrounding myself with good people that I trusted. I had a good nose for people that like I thought were up to no good versus people that I could trust. And I always had an inner circle of people I could fully trust. A lot of them were ambitious and smart individuals, brought different things to the table. And for me, I'm a big question asker. That's how I learn. I like to ask questions. So for me, it was not so much about having like regular mentors or role models that I looked up to or had like regular meetings with. It's like when I had a question or I had multiple questions, I would ask whoever I thought were the best few people to ask that question to, gather information from everybody, and then make the decision that I thought was best for me. Because there usually is never one right answer. And context matters. And I think the context from who I am and where I'm coming from and what I'm trying to accomplish is different than someone else's. So I like to gather opinions and facts and then make the best decision for myself. So
I love that. I'm the same way, man.
Yeah, I don't really have like a set of mentors or role models throughout my life. It was more just surrounding myself with people that I thought
You're a natural networker, honestly, right? And seeing what value can they bring. And then when you have those questions, having, one, obviously bringing them whatever value you can to them, but, to reciprocate that. And then in those moments, like you said, it's trust. And I think that's such a big thing, because I've had this conversation with a couple of people about transactional relationships, right? In business, as an owner, you're always going to have, you have a good heart. You always want to do right by people. That's how you're raised, kindness. But sometimes you have to understand when people are trying to get something out of you. And, as I get older, that's something I'm learning and getting better at, is observing that. And who are the people that are texting you on your birthday? Who are the people who are texting you, how are you doing, giving you a call out of the blue, versus the people who are only reaching out to you when they kind of need something. And
what's interesting, I've learned over the years too, I think when I was younger, it used to be like more of like, yeah, like we should be doing stuff for each other type stuff. Like if I'm going to ask something from you, you ask something from me, let's do something for each other. And as I've gotten older, I've realized that like it's good sometimes just to give and just to do for someone else and not expect anything in return, not have a transactional symbiotic type relationship that like everyone gets equal value. Like it's okay to give a lot more than you get. It's fulfilling. It makes you feel like a really good person, which ultimately gives you confidence and makes you feel good about yourself. So, that takes time to learn. It was not something that was natural to me. Right. But I've worked on it more and more over the past decade, because I think it matters. I think it really does. Definitely
does. I mean, I'm a product of that, and I can attest to it. When I started my company, I reached out to you, asked, hey, can I use this office or meeting room for a picture or photo shoot for my website? And it was a simple yes. And like, I know to you, it was like, all right, he can use the meeting room after hours. But for me, that was such a big deal. And you couldn't, and for me also, like that makes me want to give to the people below me. And it's kind of like the trickle down effect that it has on people, and that human element and that human touch. It's heavier than, giving someone business at the end of the day. I think that it's like, listen, you need this. I'm here for you. I'll help you. And like I said, I can attest to that. You practice what you preach, man. And I realize as we're going through this, why I always follow you and like everything you're saying is because we literally, I think the same way, taking pieces from everyone and kind of molding it into your own. You only have your own life. Like everyone's life is different. You have your own route, and you need to make the most out of it. And then I also didn't mention earlier is I took the accounting route. I was getting a CPA, of course. What do you get into during the recession is become an accountant. It's the safe route. And then sitting for the CPA exam, I literally looked in the mirror and I was like, I can't do this. I'm miserable. And that's why I kind of took that first mover approach of like, let me get into social. This is like a cool new world. Let me test it out. But I know we're coming to a close, Ryan. I have my last topic is work from home, right? And I know, when we worked together, everything was in the office. But as I've left Vayner and kind of pursued my own business, I've been very bullish on remote work. Obviously, the pandemic expedited this. But now I think a lot of businesses, large corporations, Salesforce, Spotify, Microsoft, all these larger companies are implementing these hybrid approaches or just remote work for all, from wherever you want. And I wanted to just get your take on, one, do you see this as the future? Do you think we'll always be, this hybrid approach or remote only, or do you see we can go back into offices? And then two, just going through your own business and, going through this over the last year and a half and shifting, your entire model, have you seen it become more efficient? And then what are the struggles and some of the obstacles that you've seen?
I love it. I think that it has made us wildly productive. I think that there's pros and cons for sure. And I think what that means is that you'll probably see a future of hybrid, so that you can get the best of both worlds. I think that the con of work from home is that, you're definitely getting meeting and Zoom fatigue. My people are on back-to-back Zooms all day long, and there really is no church and state between personal and work because it bleeds into the night. Now, nobody has anything else to do. You're not going out to dinner. You're not seeing friends. So you're just working a lot more than ever before.
Right.
That I think could lead to burnout eventually. So I think there needs to be mindfulness there. I also think that, nothing can replace a relationship being built in person over time and, having a long dinner or a glass of wine or whatever it is. So I think that element is missing, but I don't think you need to fully go back 100% in order to get that. So that's why I think a hybrid model works, because I do think Zoom has work from home has allowed you to do things for yourself more efficiently than ever before. People are working out when they want to work out. They're able to, save the time on the commute. Some people have really long commutes. They get that time back for themselves, either with their families or for their self-care, reading a book, whatever it is, which makes them happier humans because they're accomplishing more. And also, I think Zooms for efficacy, you're in a meeting room, there's side conversations going on, people are talking over each other. In a Zoom, one person talks, everyone else listens, and you're able to, nobody wants to sit on a Zoom 1 minute longer than they need to, whereas in a meeting, it could go over 15, 20, 30 minutes.
Right.
Whereas in this environment, like, you're efficient. You get what you need done, and everybody leaves and gets their work done. So I think it's a hybrid in the future. At least that's what I want to deploy. I think a lot of people miss the face-to-face interaction and human touch, which is reasonable. But I do think work from home has its perks in a lot of ways. So I think we'll see a mix.
Do you think that people like myself or the 25 to 30-year-olds, in the social space or just advertising space, do you think they'll have a leg up on the younger kids just because we received our training in person versus doing it virtually? Right? Like sitting next to someone, running these ad campaigns, running these brand strategy workshops. Do you think that we actually may have a leg up or just will be in an advantage over the next, let's say, 5-10 years versus the younger kids who wouldn't necessarily have that face time?
But I think they will have the FaceTime though. So I think that unless you're going to work from someplace that's
fully remote,
work from home, which, yeah, it depends how you learn. I think some people will be just fine because they like this type of environment of learning. Right. Other people are going to struggle with it because they don't like this. They can't focus and they need that face-to-face and EQ. So I think it depends on the human being. And but ultimately I think that I don't think most companies are going to go 100% remote is my gut.
No, I completely agree. I think, also on that fact of just once things open up, I'm just so eager to see how people react. Is it we're offline by 4:00 because now I can have a life and I can go out for lunch or dinners with my friends. So it's interesting to see the discipline and the accountability that's going to happen and occur when it's like the opposite of what the pandemic did. As it always happens, it's in these like 3-6 month sprouts. We're coming to a close, Ryan. As I ask all of my guests, and I know we spoke briefly on this earlier, when it comes to, as I say, the stress and anxieties of life and, what brings you family, I like to call it, the medicine. So like for me, it's basketball, golf, music. It takes me away from whatever's in my mind and going on in my daily life. What is your medicine? And, please tell us a little bit more about how it helps you, especially with running your business.
Yeah. So obviously my family, my kids, I have a 4.5-year-old and 2.5-year-old, and, light up my day, especially after a day of work, a day of Zoom meetings. For me to be able to just walk out there and see them and play with them is just like, it changes everything. So that's number one. Number two is the New York Knicks. I am a die hard Knicks fan, and
they're looking good.
They are.
All it takes is a good coach, and then you get some young talent and start there. I'm a Jets fan, as you know, so I'm very into you just need someone to run the show.
Yeah, I mean, like tonight, like there's a Knicks game tonight. Like I'm genuinely excited. Like genuinely, it makes my day and my night better when there's a Knicks game. Now, granted, if they lose, it makes everything horrible for me. But that's the one place where I actually have trouble controlling my emotions in life is the Knicks. For some reason, it just kind of like takes a hold of me in a way that I become a very different human being. So
can't control it, It's not like based off of your outcome or what you're putting in.
Yeah. So, but I generally get excited for the games, and then tennis. I still use it as my namaste, my holy grail in terms of, I know when I'm able to get out there and play for an hour and a half, 2 hours, it's just epic. Everything falls apart in terms of what else is going on in my life. And I'm able to zone in and take out all stress, anxiety, aggression, whatever it is on the court. And I'm a competitive person, so that's where my outlet is. It goes all there so that I'm very, very grounded in kind of other areas of my life, I feel.
It's amazing. And I love that you record it, because when we were kids, like I always say that, like I wish I had my basketball highlights from high school. I wish like we had just pull up the phone and you can just record my entire game that I can look back at. But unfortunately we didn't. But now take advantage of it. All right. So we're coming to a close, Ryan, and my last game that I play is top three. So my first question would be top three comedians.
Sebastian Maniscalco.
Nice.
Jerry Seinfeld, and Eddie Murphy.
Nice. Top three cities that you visited.
Ooh, in the world.
Yeah, in the world.
This is a tough one because...
You can say the States. We can stick to the States if you'd like.
No, I was going to say because context matters. Like my favorite trip of all time, I went to Mykonos for one of my best friend's bachelor parties.
Right.
Like context matters. Like I don't know if I would say...
Let's say the most beautiful city you've been to that had culture, food, and all the things that you would look for if you were to move somewhere.
Interesting. I love Italy so much. I mean, I'm from Long Island. I'm a Jew. You love Italian food. You love Italy. So all the places I've been in Italy. I went to Portofino and was obsessed with Portofino in Italy. Mm-hmm. I do like Paris a lot. And I would say I liked Denmark a lot. I went to Copenhagen and I really liked Copenhagen quite a bit.
It's funny. I have a buddy who I spoke to today who's moving there. They love it. His family was from there though, so he has that. But it's just, I was like, wow, back to Denmark. He's like, it's a beautiful city. I haven't been yet. And then last question will be top three movies of all time.
Ooh.
Sorry.
Billy Madison.
Did you see yesterday, by the way?
I did.
I know this will be dated, but how amazing was that?
It was funny.
It was so good.
So I'm going to go with Billy Madison. I'm going to go with, oh man.
Told you we'd have some tough ones.
Yeah, this is so hard. Because like I'm trying to think what direction I want to go in. Like I definitely have to have an action movie in there, but like is it Commando for me with Arnold? Is it Karate Kid, one of those movies from the 80s? Like this is really tough. But
I love Billy Madison was just first and foremost. Let's just get that out of the way. It's the greatest of all time, and let's move on.
Greatest.
So sorry to interrupt.
I'm going to go with, I know this is terrible that I'm blanking so hard right now, but
it's okay.
Arnold, Sylvester. I love Star Wars. I'm sorry, Star Wars. I'm a diehard Star Wars fan, and I'd probably say Return of the Jedi. And I love the Avengers movies too. I'm a big fan of all of them.
Diversification. So like the Avengers, you would watch yourself, or like because you have kids, or you were into the series, right?
Myself.
I love that.
My kids aren't old enough to watch it. I cannot wait to show my kids. I cannot wait to show my kids Star Wars, Avengers, all of it. Like, oh my God, I can't wait.
That's awesome, man. All right, Ryan, we're coming to a close. We're done. Thank you so much. Appreciate you coming on today and sharing all this insight, and then just an insight into your life as well. As I said earlier, just thank you again for everything you've done for me. I'm always rooting for you, man. I'm always watching from afar. Keep chugging along.
Hey,
and good luck to the Knicks. You know, as I say, good luck to the Jets, so I know where you're at. At least you have some championships. I have literally nothing to look back to. But much love. Thank you again, Ryan. We'll talk soon.
Okay. Thanks, Jordan.
Thank you.